friends, my name is Joey Balistreri. Welcome to my channel. This is such a sweet project. I'm going to invite you into my brain a little bit, which is scary, but I am making these bird cage earrings and pendants, and I have come up with quite a few different ways, options maybe for assembling them and for making this, I want to say wearable art, but honestly, I think it's more wearable poetry. They're very whimsical and very storybook and just lovely. They have a vintage, kind of a Victorian quality, like the old Victorian wire bird cages that were really more part of home decor than they were anything else to house the birds, really. But this one was my prototype, and this little bird charm came in a set of flower charms, and I will link that in the description box below. But there was only one bird in that whole set of flower charms, so I don't know if that's what everyone will get if they order the set, but I only had one, so I said, okay, I will make him into a pendant. And then I have been searching around for other birds, and I found this set of birds, which is really the right size. And there were some kind of whimsical ones that are bright colors, and then some that look more like a natural bird. So I'm gonna use this pink one, you might have guessed. And then I had some ideas for other ways to configure this. And let me just preface this project also by saying that this is mostly a connecting project, all basic jewelry skills, and there are some tips and tricks that I've kind of discovered along the way, and I'll share those with you. But I did only one wire wrapped loop in the project, and there's a reason for that. The rest is all simple loops, a little tiny bit of stringing, opening and closing a jump ring. So if you think this is adorable and you could never make this, because it looks a little involved, I think, once it's all put together, but it's really not. It's really simple, and I'm gonna break it down for you. So I went shopping in my own supplies. I also popped into my local craft store, and I did find these birds, but you would have to change the scale of what I'm going to do here to hang this bird inside the cage. But I was also thinking how cute it would be to create your little bird cage and hang a larger bird instead of a flower at the bottom, like the bird was out of the cage, and then I have these little feathers, and maybe hang a feather charm inside the cage. So again, I'm thinking like wearable poetry. I also thought about like a skeleton key, like, you know, these old kind of wire things in history had these skeleton keys. That would be a really pretty charm to hang from the bottom. Any feathers that you have, obviously you can change the finish to silver or antique brass. So that's what I had in my stash. I also had this type of a little bird. In the end, I really love the enamel birds that look, you know, a little bit more lifelike, but you could make it more like folk art with a bird like this. You could really change the look of this design. I'm going to give you my measurements for the bars on the bird cage and how I embellish them. And I will say also that in doing a project like this where you're making something so mini, the more detail you can give it, the better it's going to look, and the more, you know, real and authentic it's going to look. Hence, having loaded little 15-0 Delica seed beads onto the bars of my cage. It is not tedious. This is 20 gauge wire, and they really go on quite easily. So that was just a few of the options. So let me show you the earring that we're going to make today, because I do have two of each of these birds. So I did a little fun earring, and for me, I quite like the flower dangle at the bottom of the cage. I typically actually have a couple of vintage wire bird cages, and I use them for flower arranging. So for me, that kind of speaks to my heart. So that's the way that I did mine. But as I said, you could dangle a key from here. You could dangle another bird. You could, you know, really play with this earring poetry and just have fun. I put this really scrolly little ear wire. It's one of my favorite ear wires. This is an assortment that I have reordered a million times, and mostly I am stacking bead caps and spacer beads. So that is what we're going to put together today, and I'm going to bring in my little beading dish that I like to work from, And these are my seed beads from my Beads of the Month Club. These are 11O Delicas from Adornable Elements, and this colorway that you see on my birdcage bars is so gorgeous. It's called Copper Pearl Lined Chartreuse, and it just gave this gorgeous, like here's some in my dish, it just gave this gorgeous like gilded and dimensional look to these tiny little birdcage bars. So, you know, as I said, the more that you can layer on details in a piece like this, the better it's going to look. And before we start connecting, I'm just going to show you, I have this wonderful little assortment of enamel bead caps in all colors. So that's what you see at the top and bottom of my bird cage, just to add detail, and I will link this below if you like that. But you could also just stack regular bead caps. These are all the colors of the bird assortment if you like the purples or the greens. There is one that's more like earthy, like a real bird. There's a couple in here that look like real birds in nature. I kind of went for the colorful birds, and I didn't get out the whole assortment that this green bird was in, but I will link it. And then this little assortment of bead caps might be useful. This is 120 bead caps, and in here is these. And what you need for the top and bottom, the main frame of your bird cage, you need a bead cap that has, that's filigree so that you can connect to it, but you have to have 8 openings in order to do the 4 prongs. You connect in every other prong. And I'm going to say here again, I may be back in another video with another take on this design, because when I was connecting these, it's quite beautiful to connect a bar to every single filigree. You get a totally different look, and then maybe hang something inside or do something different. I have some ideas, so you may see part 2 of this design, because it really, the more I connected, the more it inspired creativity. But this little set I found, and if you want to stack bead caps, there were all kinds in here. It looks really lovely to layer your bead caps, and there were all kinds from filigree to flower shape, really tiny to, you know, this little, I believe these are 10 millimeter. The ones that I am using are 12 millimeter. I measured them on my caliper. So the ones that you see in my sample cages are these 12 millimeter, and they have 8 openings on this little filigree. And for showing you how to connect this actually worked pretty well. So I'm gonna take my bird out that I'm gonna use and set this little dish of deliciousness aside. I just wanted to show you when I started designing where my brain went, some of the options. These little feathers are really adorable, and I even thought about hanging a feather beneath, but as I said, I quite like the flowers. This, I think these came from the Beadbox Bargains website, but they've been in my stash for 100 years, so I don't know if they're even still available. It was just something that I had. That was just some of my ideas. So if you like this project and you're going to go shopping in your own supplies, that's just what was in Joey's brain, which might be scary, but that's where it came from. Okay, let's start the connecting process here. It is so fun, you guys. Okay, so I started with, when doing the earrings, I started with 8 pieces of wire that I cut pretty much identical, and I did 1.5 inches, just under 1.5 inches for mine. But again, if you like this project, I mean, you can use my measurements totally, but if you like it and you want to make a smaller bird cage, it's going to be a little more difficult connecting to have less room, but you can totally make this smaller. And if you use these smaller bead caps, if you go down to a 10 millimeter bead cap, it might be wise to make it smaller just to have the look right. And I'm going to try one. You know I'm going to try one. But for this size bead cap, this was kind of the sweet spot. So I started with 4 pieces of 20 gauge wire. I'm using my Soft Flex wire. It has an anti-tarnish coating, and it's very easy to work with. And so that's where that starts. And the thing that I found is that my 1-step looper works great for this, the smallest size, the 1.5 millimeter. Now you could use your pliers to do your simple loops for the bars on the bird cage, but this really works well. If you're not familiar with this tool, it makes a cut for you on this back jaw of the plier on your wire, but there's no beads on this. And so using this for these bars means that I don't have to measure anything. So I'm gonna put my first wire in just a teeny tiny bit past the back jaw of the tool. It's gonna make a fresh cut for me on my wire, and it's going to make that loop. I make sure that my wire is against this back plate, and then I get a really good loop. Now I want to pull this wire down and just make sure it's really straight, because you won't have an opportunity to straighten the bars of your cage again after this step. And so now by pulling that wire so that it's centered, when I remove my tool, I have a perfect loop. And I'll show you how well this is going to work for this. So the next thing I did is I threaded on 13 of these Delica seed beads, and they just, I mean, you could leave the wire plain, but as I said, the more details that you can layer on in a piece like this, the better your piece is going to look. I need to stop talking and count to 13. That's 5, 13. And I love this little seed bead dish, and I have been linking this in my list of favorite tools. And as you can see, when you have really small work to do like this, it really makes the project go well, and I don't get frustrated. So you know, that is my little seed bead tray is linked. And so now I'm going to use my tool again. I'm going to push my seed beads down. And this first one is the trickiest because that's all you have to hold on to, but I'm going to show you a trick for the rest of them. So this time I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fit my wire in, but this time I have to watch that I'm not crushing my seed beads. So I'm going to just gently close the tool. Just get it in there and gently close the tool. I'm on my seed beads. So like I say, the first one, because you don't have a lot of wire, the first one is the trickiest, and then there's a trick for the rest of them that makes it so much easier. So just get it in there, take your time, get it in there. I got it. And then that time I didn't even have it make a cut. Make sure it doesn't flip out. I'm making that loop, pull that down, and if you want to, if your this loop isn't closed all the way, but if they become misaligned, it's really important for a pretty bird cage that everything is lined up. And so now that's done. And so what I'm going to do, so that from here on I have something to hold on to, I'm going to open this loop and I'm going to attach it to my bead cap. And another thing to make your piece look good is I am attaching it so that the opening of my loop is going to go on the inside of the bead cap, so like that. So I'll be reaching inside. So the outside of my bird cage is seamless. You know, if you turn it the other way, you're going to see where your simple loops open. But if you connect it so that they're on the inside, it will be a seamless bar on your bird cage, and it just looks prettier. So I'm going to get this one closed really well. It is amazing how those little Delicas want to escape. Just close it really well, a little bit of work hardening, and the first bar is on. Okay, so now we have something to hold on to for the rest of them. I'm going to set this down, and at this point I'm going to prepare my dangling bird, and I'm going to do it this way just in case you like this project but you're making adjustments for your own piece. It's advantageous to have this ready to go so you can check how everything is connecting. So for this little bird, I took a really small jump ring, and I took a piece of wire. I was like, where is it? I laid everything out. I just took another little piece of that 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to put a simple loop in one end. Do want it to be nice and straight. I do my straightening a lot of times while the tool is holding on to the wire for me. And now this is ready to go for my bird. So I'm going to put this little jump ring in here, and I did this so that my bird would hang at the right length inside the cage, but also just to make him dangle. And the other thing I wanted to share with you guys is, if you've been on my channel before, you know that when I'm finished with a piece, I take my Permalac coating and I brush it over everything when I'm finished with a piece. And I'm going to do that again on this one, but I did take my little birds and the backs are brushed with Permalac. I don't know if you can even see how it's a little bit shiny. I made sure that I did this edge where it's plated around the edge of the bird, and I even brushed over the enamel. So it's just really pretty and it will not tarnish, because once this is put together, it's going to be a little tricky to do that. So I laid my birds in fact, for newer people, let me just grab a bird and show you how easy this is. I just laid them in my dish. I started on the back side. This is my Permalac coating. I use the semi-gloss. It comes in matte as well, but if you want things to still sparkle, like rhinestones, anything that you brush over, the semi-gloss will not take away the shine where the matte will. The matte is good for certain things, but I tend to use this, and I just brushed it on. I also will sometimes just use my pliers to hang on to things. I think I got these little guys by the tail. Just got them by the tail and just brush it on. It dries really fast. And like I said, I brushed it over the whole thing and making sure that I went around the edge and inside his little loop, because once this is connected, as I said, reaching this with this little brush would be challenging. And then I just set it down to dry. And then when it's dry, I'll come back and kind of do a little bit on the tail where well, he does not want to flip over for me. Just like that. You can, it's really not necessary to do 2 coats, but sometimes if I feel like I've missed an area or I didn't get a good coat on, I'll do it. So, and I'll just set him aside to dry. And that's what I did on both of my pink birds before I started working. So for newer people, I know many of you have seen my little Permalac, but it takes plated bits and really makes your pieces last, because once that coating is on, they really don't tarnish. Okay, so I digress. So I'm going to just do my little stack. And so inside is just 1 spacer bead, and it's just from a mix of Tibetan spacers. So that goes on here. And so my little bird is ready. When I get my bars done, I can put this inside my bead cap and, you know, kind of see how I'm doing with my connecting. So it's good to get your little bird ready. And I'll just pause here and show you the spacers, because all the spacers that I'm using, these little Tibetan ones that are top and bottom of the cage, and the little floral one came from this Tibetan spacer mix, and I'll link that in the description box too. Again, if you've been on my channel, you have seen me pull this out probably 1,000 times, because I pull from it all the time. But that's what I use to kind of make the bird cage look ornate and, you know, look like a Victorian, like, accent furniture. So this time I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to put my wire just past the back jaw, get that tiny little cut, get my loop in there, get my loop centered on my wire, make sure my wire or my birdcage bar is nice and straight. And this time I'm going to attach this to the bead cap first before I thread my seed beads on, and it makes it so much easier. So for attaching, you're going to do every other opening on the filigree. So it doesn't matter which direction I go, but I'm going to skip one and I'm going to go to the next one. And I was about to put it in wrong. If you put it this way, your simple loop will be on the outside. The opening of your simple loop will be on the outside of your cage. So I want to connect all of them so that my loops are closing on the inside of the bead cap. So then I can close this one and make sure it's closed really well so that once I get my delicas on, they don't escape. And I'll do all of them that way from here on. So now I have almost, the bead cap is almost like a little handle, and now I can get my 13 seed beads on. 13. And so you'll see this time I have the bead cap to hold on to, and so it's going to make getting the this simple loop in much easier. So the one-step looper always makes your loops going upward, and the opening of the loop will be on the top of my wire. So I'm holding this so it's going to be exactly the same as the loop on this end. So in other words, my loop opening is right here, which is on the inside of the bead cap. You know, I think your orientation matters on a piece like this because all these little details make the finished piece just magical. You know, like just really beautiful. So now, like I said, I have a little handle. So this is going to make getting this in here much easier. So I'm going to make sure that my seed beads, I gently close, make sure my seed beads are right here at the front of the tool, and I'm in there, I'm against this back plate. Let it make that little tiny little cut for me. And you know, if you do break one of your seed beads, it's not the end of the world and it doesn't show that much, but I literally haven't broken a single one doing this. I'm not popping the tool closed, I'm gently closing it. I'm going to pull this down as I close, and whoops, poor little bird cage. And this is open a little bit. I want to make sure that I close it, and that happens sometimes because I've got like every little millimeter of space on this. I am going to have to open this again, obviously, to connect it to the bottom, but my you know, my first two bird cage bars are on, and the bead cap really helps. Okay, last one, same step. Put the wire in just past the back jaw, get a little cut, loop, exact same thing. You're just going to repeat this. I'm going to open that loop, and this goes, will fill in my circle. Again, my opening to the inside. And let me close this and I'll show you what we're looking like so far. In fact, I can't get my fingers out of the way, so let me put my little prepared bird in so you can see. So this is what we're looking like so far. Every other loop in the bead cap has a bar, and I'm ready to do the last one. Okay, little bird, it's not time for you to go in your house yet. And I'm just going to feed on my last 13 seed beads. I absolutely love getting the Adornable Elements Beads of the Month Club, and I especially love when I get seed beads, which is why I originally signed up for it. You just don't see these colors in the stores, and this is just so beautiful, and it adds such a stunning detail to my piece. So last one, I'm going to turn it so that I have this little bead cap for a handle, and I'm going to put it back in my one-step looper and just get my last loop in here. Just line it up, gently close the tool, get my seed beads out of the way. Teeny tiny little cut, it barely made a cut. And so for the next bit, we can go ahead and do the top of the bird cage. So the bird can go in, she can go in her house, and then on the top I used a little one of these enamel bead caps, and then I put one of these Tibetan spacers, and that's for the top of the bird cage. Let me make sure that I'm doing the same thing since they're earrings. And now I'm going to reach inside and get a hold of the loop that my bird is on. Just like reach in between everything and get a hold of the loop, and I'm going to come back with my one-step looper and put a simple loop in the top of my bird cage. Just push everything up and get a simple loop right in the top. Same steps, just pull it down. There's a lot in the way of the tool, so I will need to come in and close it, close my loop. But that is ready. And the next step is to fill in the bottom. Now what I used here is a set of, it was an assortment of decorative head pins, and I really liked this one. So when I put it down through the bottom of my bead cap, look how pretty that looks. And I used it on all of them. So when you look into my bird cages, can you see? I don't know if it's such a detail, but it gives you this really pretty, like ornate detail inside. But you could accomplish this also with like a head pin a ball head pin and a spacer bead. Like, you know, play around with what you're going to stack here if you don't have these decorative head pins. But I think I can link these as well. I've had these for a while, but if I can, when I edit, I'll link these if you really like these. But as I said, you can accomplish the same thing. Like, I literally played with my spacer beads and my bead caps and just created stacks that I liked. I mean, the stacking is what gives you the ornate kind of old-fashioned metal birdcage look. So that's what I did there. And then this is the underside. This is the bottom of the birdcage. So I chose a little bit different filigree bead cap, again, just to add to the ornate look of my birdcage. I got a seed bead stuck to me. And then I did another one of the Tibetan spacers. And now this is the only place on the birdcage that I did a wrapped loop. And I just wanted to really stabilize this for the bottom of my cage before I connect it. So right here, I'm going to do a wrapped loop. And for newer people, I'll show you how I do them. I get a hold of my head pin right where it's at the bead, you know, right at the bead, put a 90-degree bend in, then put my round nose pliers right there in that bend, bring the wire over the top barrel of the plier, rotate, bring it all the way around, and here's where I just line everything up. If I have to roll my wrist back, whatever I need to do to get that loop kind of centered on my stack, that's what I do. And then I'm just going to wrap right down. Can you guys hear my dog? She will go and drink water. She's so noisy, and she'll drink like a whole bowl of water and then drip all over my floor. Okay, I'm just going to wrap down to my beads, and I like to do neat wraps. Oprah, stop. You're noisy. You're a noisy girl. Okay, I'm just going to wrap right down to my little stack here, and it just firms this up, and I'm just going to trim and tuck. Just come in. I want to make sure I don't feel that or see that. Just press it gently in. And if you need to, like and I might do it again after. I fuss with my jewelry, especially, like I say, on a piece like this. I will fuss with it until everything is perfectly straight. So the bottom of the bird cage is done. And now the really fun part, now we can start connecting. So I'm going to tell you here, the first three connections that you do are really easy, and that fourth one can be a little challenging because everything is in place. And it's really simple. I'm going to open my simple loop, and again, connecting, it will connect on the inside this time because the top part of the cage, everything is connected on the inside. And it's just going to choose a spot, and we're going to do the same thing. Line up the bars of the upper part of the bird cage with the bottom part of the bird cage and connect every one. Okay, so I'm all lined up now with the top of my bird cage. Just make sure your seed beads aren't coming into that loop, and my first connection is on. And now you just want to line up. We're going to skip one. Don't connect them twisted because your cage won't hang right, and just open this simple loop. I'm going to skip the next one just the way that we did on the top and connect it, and make sure it's closed really well. I'm holding my seed beads. It is a little tricky to get in there. I'm holding my seed beads out of the way of the loop, a little work hardening, and I'm going to go all the way around like that. Just continue to line yourself up. Get your next little bird cage bar. Get your seed beads out of the way. Open the loop and come to skip one and attach one. Your last couple can be a little challenging because, you know, it starts to be a little stiff, and you also have to reach in between your bars to get your pliers in there to close your loops and, you know, straighten everything out. It's doable though. Take a deep breath. And the last one I found, you know, was the most challenging, obviously. But just go slowly, open your loop. Get lined up here. I have to move one, it's twisting. I connected this one in the wrong place. But I'm going to reach inside. It's not a big deal. I'm going to reach inside like I did on the other one and close this loop really well. And I have to move this guy over one. I don't know how I did that. It's really hard, you guys, to be under the camera lens and do this because the camera's in my way and I can't see what I'm doing, and I'm trying to show you what I did without really seeing what I'm doing. I had recently a comment where somebody said, you know, your hands are in the way, and I actually went back and watched my own video and I thought, well, I actually do have to make the piece. It's really challenging to film certain things, and I do my best to show you what I'm doing, but I do have to actually make the piece. And as you can see, like there's a camera between my eyes and my hands, and this is kind of small work. So, but I got it, and I tell everybody, you know, take a deep breath, go slowly. It's not a race. So my bird cage is connected. Let me get my fingers out of the way. I'll hold it with my pliers, but it's all connected and you can hold it up. I realize that this is not a great camera angle for you guys to look at something that's down, but here's where you want to look and see if you need to adjust anything. My bottom loop here where I'm going to add my flower, I would like to turn it. So I'm just going to hold on to everything and turn it. Just so I want my loops lined up. That looks the same as my other earring. Just give it a little turn. They spin a little bit, but just line everything up, and so it's really basically done, except I want to do a flower dangle. So this is just a little crystal, a little leftover flower from one of the bead boxes this month, a little bead cap, and another little green crystal. And the way that I do my simple loops when I'm not using the one-step looper is to give this wire a little bit of a bend, and then it looks almost like I'm going to wrap the loop. I'm going to put my round nose pliers in here, same way that I did the other loop, bring the wire over the top, get that bottom barrel out of the way, pull this around, center it, so that loop is centered on my stack of beads. And when I take my round nose pliers away, from here you could wrap, but I'm going to come and right where the two wires meet, I'm going to snip. And so I get a really pretty little simple loop, and I'm going to open it and add this to the bottom of my bird cage. Just like that, and it's ready for the ear wire. So get it facing forward, get my pretty little curly ear wire in here, and pop that right on there and close it, and this is done. I love this so much. As I said, this is like wearable poetry. Look at that, you guys. Isn't that the sweetest pair of earrings? Oh my. I absolutely love these. As always, I will put some better pictures up at the end of the video, but I am going to bring my dish back in. This little bird is dry. This Permalac dries really quickly, and I'm going to bring my Permalac back in, and I just find it's easier to do it at the end of a piece because you have leverage. So I can lay this in the dish to do one side. I have things I can hold on to. For me, it's easier than trying to take a little bead cap that's not connected to anything and brush this on. But I'm just going to generously brush it on. All of my wire, my soft flex wire, is all anti-tarnish, so I don't need to focus on my loops or anything. But if the Permalac gets on there, that's fine. And then I'll do my ear wire last because it's just gold plated, but I'm going to reach inside and coat that Tibetan spacer. As I said, my bird is already done, and then I can hold it upside down, you know, and work on this. Just brush it over everything generously. I'm brushing it over my enamel bead caps too, because they have the enamel is on a gold base, and I want that, you know, gold base to stay shiny. So I'm just brushing it over the enamel and everything. And even this tiny little gold plated ball head pin is getting a little coat, and the flower bead cap. So I'm just going to do this. I'll do the other earring off camera, but I just wanted to show newer people that this is what I do, and especially with a piece like this, you know, I want it to last. So I'm going to come inside and get the inside of the bead cap and that decorative head pin and just give it a really good coat. And I'm going to lay this back down and get the ear wire coated as well. So everything has been coated with my Permalac, and I'll put some much better pictures up at the end so you can have a look at these beauties. But this was such a fun, delightful project. I mean, it's just poetry in jewelry, and I had so much fun stacking my bead caps and connecting, and I'm just thrilled to have a pendant and earrings. And like I said, I have other ideas, other versions of this, so maybe you'll see another version of this. But I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments if you give this a try and what you come up with for your stacks and your dangles and your birds. So I thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check the description box if you're looking for anything, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, friends.